Hello, ladies and gents. We are here to discuss probably we're heading to a territory that not a lot of people are familiar with, not a lot of people really like to talk about or know about in terms of horror because not a ton of horror was coming out this decade, but we're talking about the 50s. The 50s were an interesting time. It was kind of, Hayes Code was kind of at its height, couldn't really do a lot of inventive horror. So we got a lot of British imports that were actually giving us the proper horror we needed at the time. The rise of Hammer, the rise of, kind of cult movies a bit, but we are, heading into like the more inventive aspects of the 60s and 70s, but not quite there yet. But we already covered that. And I'm joined by Right Dude, Cinematic Sterling, and the Mark Father. So we are here. We are not queer. Get used to it. And let's start this thing. First things first is a rather unknown one, but I've seen it, so I can talk about it. But The Man Who Could Cheat Death. This was an interesting one. This one was essentially a. I don't really know how to describe this one. It's kind of one you got to see it for yourself, but it's also extremely boring. You could definitely tell it was based on a play, or it felt like it was based on a play. I mean, Christopher Lee wasted, unfortunately. However, you're like, okay, why the fuck would the Academy nominate this then? Well, I believe so because it's got the 1890. It's a period piece. They love their period pieces, and it's a very like grounded, like sort of technical portrayal of horror. A little bit. I didn't care for this one, but I could definitely see them giving this a nod because I feel like it fits in with what they like, a lot of movies as we've talked about before. So with that, I could see The Man Who Could Cheat Death. Not a classic by any means, but still a one I could see them adding. Next one is The Hound of the Baskerville. Now, Hound of the Baskerville, classic Sherlock Holmes tale. It's got Peter Cushing. And I believe this was another Hammer production. And while it's less like the book, it feels like it is more on the book, more like an adaptation of the book. I don't know. It just like they nailed the gothic tones, they nailed a lot of, different aspects in regards to like Sherlock Holmes and all that. But it's the classic story. It's probably the most well known Sherlock Holmes story. And would be nominated time and time again in this universe. So, again, period piece, gothic, British. Academy likes all those things. And Sherlock Holmes, Sherlock Holmes is a classic. So there is that as well. Next up, we have The Tingler. Now, okay, now I know some of you guys have seen this one, so unmute yourselves. Talk about The Tingler because I don't want to be the only one talking for an hour and a half. So,
who wants to go first? Because I think all of us might have seen this movie.
Rob, since you're talking, why don't you go first?
Sure, why not? I actually do remember seeing this movie. I was watching this. I remember watching this like a couple of years ago with my mom. I've already stated before that my mom was the horror parent. She would tell me like when she was a kid that her family took her to see this movie, and I remember she was always kind of terrified of it. Although we were like, I mean, it really does. I mean, it's got Vincent Price in it. How can you go wrong? You can never go wrong with Vincent Price. So, I mean, it is a really good movie. So,
yeah,
this probably could be something that they actually could be able to go with.
It does have like the classic William Castle kind of gimmicks, but I feel like it does like enough of like it's kind of like outside of like maybe it does have some surreal experimental aspects, and again, Vincent Price is great. but also it's kind of like a
Yeah.
grounded view of science, even though it should be like so fantastical and silly, but it really isn't. It really like there is like a core to it that like makes it work as well as it does. So that's what I really liked
Yeah.
about the
Yeah, that's
two.
what makes. Yeah, that's what makes the movie so good. Sure, you have William Castle being the showman as he always is. You gotta love the gimmicks. This would have been a lot of fun seeing this in the theater back then because he would put buzzers in the seats to make audiences think that the Tingler is
Oh
actually
yeah.
in them.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And then yeah,
And I,
stopping the movie so you could scream the tingler away and
Yeah.
and
all that fun
I
stuff.
just this was such a good idea too. Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
the shiver, that chill down your spine. Oh, that's just a monster in you.
That's pretty.
I watched
Yes.
this. I watched this the last Oscar-A-Thon. It is very, very good.
It is really good, and it's pretty much it. Like it tries to get the audience that feeling, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Kind of
when we
thing.
were at a, we were at a point where like movie theaters, I wouldn't say were dying, but they were like kind of like in sort of a weird phase because like television was becoming really popular, and people weren't going to the movies. Oh, how history repeats itself. But so they were like, oh, you gotta have Panavision, you gotta, Technicolor. The only way you could see anything in color, because everyone had a black and white set at the time. Oh, you can only go to the movies for a proper, big screen experience. That, it was because of movie theaters were aching for anything, is the reason we got air conditioning. So we could thank movie theaters almost going bankrupt for air conditioning. So suck it, Britain. Anyway, but yeah, air conditioning, and there was a lot of gimmicks. There was like 3D was probably the biggest one, but William Castle had all of his like fancy gimmicks where it was like, oh, you can get a full refund if you get too scared before the third act. Like, oh, you gotta scream and you get the tingling in the seats. House on Haunted Hill had like a flying skeleton in the middle of the movie. So you had like kind of all of that. That's William Castle was like kind of like a modern like P.T. Barnum in a way, but with less animal abuse and less people abuse. So he was like kind of like the American like Alfred Hitchcock in a lot of ways, but like doing his own thing. So yeah, William Castle definitely is pretty damn great, and I think this would be included in the pantheon of his, of the changed Academy, what if alternate history that we're doing. So next up we have.
Oh, I was gonna say, did you have anything for it, Mark? Or
I don't think he's seen it. What's up?
For the Mummy?
No, the Tingler.
The Tingler.
Oh, the Tingler. No. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the Mummy. This is probably my favorite Hammer film, next to Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. We already covered that, I think. But yeah, the Mummy, it's got Peter Cushing, and it's definitely one of those cases where it's like it's definitely feels more highbrow than it actually might be perceived as a little bit. Because it's about a killer mummy, but like it feels like greater than that. Like one of the most famous scenes is like the conversation that I believe Emmett Bay is his name, with Peter Cushing's character about like the importance of keeping history as is, but like also like preserving it, and like how those very like the Western views versus like the kind of like Eastern views a little bit of those like ideas were very like well thought out and well like spoken. And I think Peter Cushing is excellent here. 1895, a little bit of period piece there. And it's overall just a very well made and well written, well paced movie. It's definitely the most interesting and the most intriguing out of all of them. And I can't praise this movie enough, and I think they would definitely add it. But yeah, The Mummy, great stuff. I don't know if anybody else here has seen it.
Nope.
I would highly recommend it. It's definitely my favorite out of the Hammer productions that I've seen. But yeah, great stuff.
I
Uh,
love the original, so I mean,
oh yeah, don't worry, we'll get to that soon enough.
of course,
But
yeah.
next up, House on Haunted Hill. Mark, you just watched this a
William
couple
Castle.
days ago.
Yes,
Why don't
I
you give us a little something something?
Yes, I did. I really loved this. I thought it was really good, really good. Um, uh, I mean, dear God, it was. I mean, Vincent Price. Of course, you can't go fucking wrong with him. I especially love how, the effect. Look at the effects. They look kind of cheap. And they're like, well, it's probably just for the time. But then, it turns out they flip the script on you. I don't know how much of a spoiler you want me to give here, but I mean,
I mean, it's a fucking almost like
1959,
70-year-old
yeah,
movie. I think
exactly
you're
true.
fine.
But that was part of the point because it was fake. It was fake. The whole thing was fake. The whole thing was set up, to make it, the whole thing was a setup. And it has some nice twists and turns there, So I mean, but yeah, the cast is great. Vincent Price is fucking fantastic, of course. I mean, he's the type, his voice sounds so sophisticated. You just want to believe he must be British.
Yeah, I remember years ago when I looked him up, he's like, no, he was fucking born in St. Louis,
Yes.
Missouri. Like, it's like, you think he was like British. No, it's just like,
Yes.
he has
No.
such a unique accent that you just can't.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, this one was a whole lot of fun. This was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think what also could work in the Academy's favor is that was one of the first example. I wouldn't say one of the first, but definitely an early example of meta commentary in movies, because this was a whole satire on the old dark house trope of the 30s and 40s.
Yes.
So there was like that element as well. I think they would have liked, and plus, it's just an overall great movie. It's like you think it's like this cheesy, cheap B movie, but it really isn't. It subverts expectations, but like not in the stupid Ryan Johnson kind of way, but in an actual genuine, like interesting and really great kind of way. So House on Haunted Hill is it's a classic, but it's a classic for a reason. And I feel like a lot of people like see this movie and they're like, oh, it was so stupid and cheesy. It's just like, did you not like get it? Like the movie is satire. Like, that's the point,
Exactly.
But great stuff. And I love the remake too. I think, like, I would say, I know the remake is, again, it's similar to this movie, which is very 50s. The remake is very 90s, but in like a good way. And they work as a great companion piece to each other. And I think they're a really good experience is watching them back to back, which is what Mark did. So I recommend that if you have not seen them. Because I remember watching the remake first, and then I'm like, now I feel like I gotta watch the original. So the next day I watched the original, and I'm like, that really works. So it's not a lot of people like the remake, which is fair. I can kind of understand why, but I love both of them extremely, and I think both like have their pros and cons, but like both work as like not. And it's one of those cases where a remake is not better or worse than the original. It's just so different with how it like handles its satire. It's so good. So
plus it's another 1959 movie with Vincent Price in it.
Directed by William Castle. So he had a twofer that year. So, but that's probably not going to be the last of the twofers. But anyway,
and both movies were awesome.
Both movies were awesome. So 1958. We're starting off with The Fly again. Mark has been watching a lot of these recently. So, Mark, why don't you give a little tidbit on the original Fly from 1958?
Another one I'm a big fan of. I mean, I think it's freaking adorable, man. I mean, it's obviously everybody, if you've seen the movie, you've seen this, the famous scene. It's kind of been overshadowed by the David Cronenberg remake. So because I mean, he was able to do so much more with that, be so much more gruesome with it, because you actually get to see the transformation over time in that one. But I mean, with this one, it's still a good movie. You give a really good performance from the cast. It's more told through the woman's point of view because she sees her husband get obsessed with her work, and you see him kind of become more secretive over time. with this teleportation device, and it's just a really it's really sells it, and I love to see. I love the ending where he kills it. You see the scene at the end where he's like, but I mean, the cop and Vincent Price are just sitting there looking at it. It's like, oh well, that's curious. They don't bother helping the poor guy killing the spider.
I was gonna say. Honestly, I remember catching this movie on TV when I was a kid, and I remember that ending, the "help me," which just freaked me out.
Yeah, honestly, that's like the scariest part about this movie. This is one of those movies I respect but don't really like very much. It's okay, but I feel like the problem I have with this movie is like most of the movie is just her and the son trying to catch the fly, and I didn't find that to be terribly interesting. But it definitely feels more like highbrow than like some of the more sillier B movies that were being released at the time.
Yeah.
But even then, the fucking ending, like that made me fucking shit my pants. That was that. It's so funny because I love the remake. The remake is actually one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite horror movies.
Of course. Yeah.
That the help me bit from this movie is scarier than the entirety of the remake. I will die on that hill. Like it fucking like I will, and straight up, because both of these were on Netflix way back in the day. And I watched the original and the remake back to back. After watching the original, not the remake, the original, I woke up screaming that night.
Yeah,
because that fucking ending, like I can't even watch that ending anymore, and it fucking just freaked me out so badly. But even then, this is definitely one of like the better, like in terms of like not like degenerate movies at the time. I think the Academy would like that, but. Even then, it's definitely respectable. It's definitely high class.
Yeah,
I don't personally care for it, but it did a lot right with how it told its story, and
it did.
Really, really liked it.
I thought honestly, I mean, I thought this movie was just okay. It's a movie I respect more than I like, in my opinion. Like the remake with Jeff Goldblum just did this concept 10 times better. It's not as interesting when he's already the fly, but when you see him slowly turning into the monster, that's what made that movie work so well. I don't know. I thought everything in the remake was superior to this. I mean, it's not a bad movie, but
I do think obviously they had a limitation of the technology of the time. There's only so much they could do, and plus the gore factor. I mean, they couldn't really do much for that, because it's the 50s. But I think they did extremely well for what they did. I do like the way they finally revealed. It's like when you finally see it, when she pulls off his thing. Like, oh my god!
Oh yeah,
it's just like that was pretty cool.
You see the whole, you see her through his point of view, with all the. Oh god!
I mean, that's what the poster is.
Exactly.
That's what you see in the movie from his perspective. So. Yeah. But yeah, The Fly, respectable. Not a personal favorite of mine, but it's a movie I very much respect and have and really, really like very respectability in terms of that.
I thought it was a pretty good mystery they set up, and how she admits to killing him, but she didn't murder him, so
but yeah, next is The Blob. I love The Blob. The Blob is like the most wholesome horror movie ever made.
It really is.
So adorable. Like, and I don't mean that in a demeaning or bad way. It's just like, it's like kind of the little movie that could.
Yeah.
It's just it had, as we use the term very loosely here, teenagers as the heroes, and good old Steve McQueen. But it's just one of those cases where it's just so like the concept is scary. I mean, as you've seen in the 80s movie, the concept of it, like of a blob eating people, is definitely like indestructible fucking feat of this thing that can absorb everybody. But the way they do it here is just like it's just like so like weirdly wholesome, and it's just very like it's just so admirable with what they could do at the time. It's obviously it's like this was an indie movie. This was really cheap. But like it's still like it just has this like unending and admirable charm that like is unmatched by like a lot of other like there have been like there's been like rom-coms and like romances, dramas, comedies that that failed to reach the level of charm that this movie has. And I think it should be one of those cases where one of the many cases in terms of going to film school. This is one of the movies that should be seen because one, it's like the indie feel, and it's just like it's the little movie that could, and that is very admirable.
It's honestly just so funny because I actually just remember what I actually just got done watching this like
there you go
not too long ago. So
yeah. So Rob, what do you have to say about it since you just finished it and got it on the mind still?
Yeah, since it's still on the mind. But this is honestly, it is one of those movies that that I mean that does help that does still hold up in terms of some things. I mean, it's got Steve McQueen in it. He's awesome. The famous movie theater scene. You know, that's iconic at this point. So, and I mean, and I think that scene alone, like that probably going back to what we were saying about the Tingler, it gives the audience like that feeling like it could pretty much come out at any moment kind of thing. In terms of like the 58, 1958 audience kind of thing, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it still really holds up, even though I still prefer the 80s remake more, but it's still worthy. So.
I think both are great in their own ways. I don't prefer one over the other. But I love both majorly.
Mm-hmm. Both are damn good, and each have like a different tone. Where this is more cheesy, like cheesy 50s B movie, whereas the 80s one kind of takes it a little bit more seriously. Honest to God, I would have loved to have gone to the Blobfest in Pennsylvania where they reenact the movie theater scene. Honestly, I think that would be fucking dope.
That would be a lot of fun.
That would be. Although I was gonna say you're very close to Philly, aren't you, Devin?
Yeah, about 45 to 50 minutes.
Okay.
Philadelphia.
I do agree with what other people are saying. Like, I think they should do another remake of this because each decade, showcasing the technology at the time. I wouldn't mind a modern remake of this, just as long as they don't make it too modern.
Yeah, or like, although we shall thank the stars that we did not get Rob Zombie's version of the Blob.
That wasn't even a Blob movie.
Yeah, it was like a monolith of blob. I don't know, and it turned people into zombies.
He would turn to people in the trailer park trash. Jesus. Show me them titties, girl.
Remember, I am Willy Wonka, and this is my fucking chocolate factory. You hear? Anyway,
that's not even that's not even his worst dialogue, man.
No, not even close. I haven't seen the worst of the worst, but let's not get into that. But yeah, I think The Blob, great movie, great remake. But yeah, great stuff. And Steve McQueen, 40-year-old as a 17-year-old is always fun to see. I know he wasn't actually 40, but I'm being hyperbolic. Now we get to more gothic stuff with Dracula. All right, so Devin, since you've seen Dracula and Frankenstein of Hammer, why don't you talk about this one?
I haven't seen all of the Hammer Draculas and the Hammer Frankensteins. Honestly, maybe I should do that for the next horror-a-thon, Hammer-a-thon.
Oh,
but this movie's, I enjoyed it. It's fun. It is far from my favorite interpretations of Dracula. As I've said many times, my favorite interpretations are Coppola's and Nosferatu. But it's a fun movie. It's a fun movie. Obviously, Christopher Lee is great as Dracula, and I love how in the beginning he's very sophisticated, but by the very end of the movie, he just becomes this mute monster. And those fangs those bloody fangs of his, those are iconic. I love how like Christopher Lee didn't like being like apparently he didn't like being in these movies.
Well, after a certain point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of got
And-
sickening. Like the sequels just got more and more ridiculous and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I believe the only reason he did like the last two was because they got Peter Cushing because Peter Cushing was doing the Frankenstein movies while Christopher Lee was doing the Dracula movies. So I think the only reason that they got that they're like he's like I'll only do it if Peter Cushing is that. So that's why I think they added him. And then on top of that, they had when I think it might have been what was it? I think the Jesus Franco version. He's like, okay, I will only do it if I can like look like the Dracula from the book, who had a mustache. I still want to fucking see that. I still want to see Dracula with a mustache. God damn it! But yeah, overall, really good movie. Not one of my favorites. It's probably my least favorite out of the Hammer productions I've seen. Honestly, Bride of Dracula is probably worse, but yeah, it's still good. It's still very good.
I mean, I was gonna say, I mean, you can't even though you can't really go wrong with Christopher Lee. So
No.
even though like he's not the best, but I mean he's still iconic.
Yep.
Kind
Most
of thing,
definitely.
And then funny enough is that 16 years after this, he went to play a Bond villain.
Yeah, I mean Bond was partially, based on,
the guy with the third
Christopher Lee.
Yep.
So yeah, Dracula, great stuff. I mean, it's a classic. I mean, pretty much any Dracula adaptation that's close to the novel would get, nominated because it just makes sense. But yeah.
Well, I mean, it's funny you say that because it's not very close to the novel.
It's not very close to the novel. It has almost nothing to do with the novel.
The thing is, I mean, and it doesn't always work out, but you don't have to watch too many of the Hammer films before you realize that they are really not afraid to go their own way with the book. Like, I thought it worked extraordinarily well with. I love their interpretation of Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, I loved it better than the original. At least the original that I saw from the 30s.
Although the Frederick March version is excellent. Don't get
me wrong. It is. It's very good. It's very, very good. I mean, it's excellent. But I mean, I liked it even better.
It just shows how good that really
It was. And this one, it also has Peter Cushing, and who is just as iconic as Christopher Lee in his own way. I mean, you can't go wrong with those two against one another.
They were best friends.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like I hope to reach the level of friendship that those two had.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, them getting kicked out of a movie theater because they were laughing too hard at Looney Tunes cartoons. Like that's like I want to reach that level of friendship with somebody like that. That they are friendship goals, most definitely.
Seriously, yeah. But I mean, it's still a fun film. It's not a great one, but it's a lot of fun.
It's fun and it's like iconic. It's just so iconic.
Yeah. I do love that lurid, colorful look.
Oh yeah. Like I love how Hammer does blood. It's just it looks like red paint.
It's
just awesome.
I love it. Very garish looking.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But next up we have Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. This is like on here because it's like it's kind of a classic and it was well liked for the time. I mean, I watched it recently and it fucking sucked, but like I'm just trying to think of it like for the time it was kind of loved for the time and a lot of people liked it. It's just a very weird movie. It's like the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman is only in the last 10 minutes of an hour and 10-minute long movie. Like, all right. But yeah, guys, this movie's so bad it has me excited for a Tim Burton movie. That's how bad this movie is. But I'm just trying to think of it for the time. It was well liked for the time, so I feel like, not a lot of stuff was coming out, not a lot of great stuff was coming out. So like, they would probably throw it a nomination. It would never win, but I decided to include it. Next, then, although this was a lot of fun. This is like what it was probably like the goriest fucking movie for the time. Fiend Without a Face, Killer Brains.
This is so bad.
It's so fun though. It's like one of those like it's campy B movie fun, and definitely one of the goriest movies of all time at the time.
Time for a shower in 30 minutes.
But yeah, it's ridiculous. Again, this was just one of those like very silly movies. I think they would have, again, for the time, they would have just like thrown it a nomination. Not a lot of great stuff was coming out, but Fiend Without a Face, I couldn't help but enjoy it. Like, it's not amazing, but enjoyable, very, very enjoyable film. Next we have The Incredible Shrinking Man. Devin, you watched this one recently. Why don't you give us your thoughts on The Incredible Shrinking Man?
A lot better than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be like very, very like corny and cheesy, but it really wasn't.
Oh, yeah, it was great. Like, that's what I
I mean,
thought.
it was actually sad. Like, I felt bad for this guy.
Yeah. Although, a little side note, fun fact, this was the movie that caused my mom's arachnophobia at 8 years old. So, little fun fact. That's why I, like, for years, for decades, like, this was the movie that, like, could not be talked about because my mom refused to talk about it because she hates it so much because it, it caused her fear of spiders. So in my mind, like, like when I was a kid, like, oh, this was like the scariest thing ever. And then when I grew up, I'm like, oh, it's probably just really just campy crap. And then like I'm like, no, that was actually like a really well-made movie. And the effects are still really good with like him as like a fucking like small guy, like being stuck in a cellar of like these things, everything that's like trying to fucking kill you. Grant Williams as the lead role is just so endlessly likable, and you just want to see him like get out of this, or like you just want to throw him a bone, like something good happened to this guy, please, for the love of God. But yeah, it helps that it had Richard Matheson behind it. He wrote it. Richard Matheson, like amazing legendary sci-fi writer. A lot of people say since George A. Romero is the father of the modern zombie. Well, if it wasn't for Richard Matheson, we wouldn't have zombies at all. So, incredible.
I love how it, the best social commentary is done by sci-fi. I've always said.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
And this one really reflects contemporary fears of, men's, I guess not shrinking role, because this was a very male-dominated time in the 50s, but fears of women and feminism, So
interesting. I never saw it like that, but that's definitely an interesting, idea.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's still a really great movie, and it's not as like campy or as corny as you think it would be, and it's genuinely a great film. So yeah, Incredible Shrinking Man. I think it might be on Amazon for free. I don't remember where I watched it, but yeah, Incredible Shrinking Man is good stuff.
I think I rented it, and yes,
all right,
yes.
You talk about this one, since I didn't really care for this one that much either. So you talk about this.
Really?
One. I thought it was okay. I mean, I liked it better than Dracula, but it's not nearly as good as The Mummy or Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. Like, those are way, way better.
Yes, Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll.
I love this movie. So far of the Hammer movies I've seen, this is my favorite. Like this was a great, remake, like readaptation of Frankenstein. Sure, it's not following the book, but I love I just fucking love Peter Cushing in this movie. And the way he delivers his lines are just so chilling. Like, Victor, where's this brain supposed to come from? I'll get it. And so Professor, look at this painting over here. Oh, ow! He pushes him off the fucking stairs.
But onto his head. Like a fucking idiot. It's like you couldn't like give him like a sedative or like, I don't know, just fucking not have him land on his head, you fucking idiot. That was like, come on. But it was still funny.
I also love the look of the monster in this movie.
Yeah, I love the look.
Or the creature. Yeah, I think this obviously my favorite Frankenstein movie will of course be the original Karloff version. But this one is this one is damn close. I think this was actually the first Hammer movie I watched.
Yeah,
No,
it's
no,
it
pretty
wasn't.
good.
No, wait, it wasn't the first Hammer movie I watched. The first Hammer movie I watched was, I believe, Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, that was the one with Herbert Lom.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I still need to watch that one. I've heard it's good. But yeah, Frankenstein's good stuff. Again, it follows kind of the
And I was just gonna say,
stuff. But yeah, Rob, what do you got to say?
well, I mean, this is honestly one that I haven't seen, but I've been hearing good things about it. So,
Yeah,
and I mean, at least I was gonna say at least it's not the
Mary
Kenneth
Shelley
Branagh
I
version.
will have revenge. I can't stop.
You come
Yeah.
on, you know I have to mention that when we're talking about
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's not my favorite Frankenstein. My favorite Frankenstein movie is probably Son of Frankenstein with Basil Rathbone. That was really good.
That one's awesome.
I prefer Bride and Son to the original Frankenstein. Original Frankenstein's a little slow, but yeah, this is still a great addition, and I think it's done. Again, my favorite look, definitely my favorite look of the creature. I love the kind of 6-button double-breasted coat and the all black and how he looks lightly green, and then he has the dead eye, and I love that look. But yeah, still pretty damn good. Then we have 20 million miles to Earth. It's just one of those campy B movies kind of things, but again, I was kind of trying to find anything. But overall, nothing too much to say about this as I have not seen it. But yeah, 20 million miles to Earth, just kind of one of those throw out a nomination, not a ton to nominate at the time, so might as well just nominate this. Then next up we have Quatermass 2. Now I have not seen the sequels to Quatermass, but Quatermass 2 was the final Quatermass film that was in black and white. But it's just, again, I've said this before in terms of Quatermass, Quatermass is one of those very respectable British characters that I would say he was kind of the inspiration for Doctor Who a little bit. And he's kind of he never oh my god British institution levels, but he is one of those iconic British characters, so I feel that they would have done something with that as well. And even though Brian Dunleavy is a pretty terrible Quatermass, but I still think it's an overall damn fine movie, at least the one I've seen. But I would add this one as sort of a we'll give it a nomination kind of thing. Then Curse of the Demon. I have seen this one. This one I respect more than I like. It's a very intriguing movie. How it's a very grounded look on cults and demonic kind of stuff. It's not about the cult itself. It's more so about John Holden, he gets this curse laid upon him, although in the original UK version it's called Night of the Demon. American version's Curse of the Demon. They changed the title, as they often do. But John Holden is very likable guy, and he's kind of the skeptic. He just doesn't believe anything that's happening to him, and he's it's very reminiscent of Dana Scully from the X-Files a lot. How very classic skeptic behavior. And Julian Carswell, the main villain, is so fucking charismatic in his role. He's so charming, but he's so deliciously evil. It could be seen as over the top. I thought it was more subdued than it could have been, but I still think overall very well done, very well. I will say the effects have held up. I was genuinely surprised that the effects are okay for what they were. But yeah, very don't expect a cult movie fucking like Wicker Man or something like that in terms of like, oh, it's really like about like heavy into the cult stuff. It's more about like a skeptic's look and how he like tries to shake this curse. And I think the way they do it is very good. So yeah, Curse of the Demon, very good movie. Would definitely recommend it. Then we have The Bad Seed. Hello, Alexandro. How you doing? Um, Also Diego Lorente also gave us a little nod. But yeah, The Bad Seed is one of those movies. It has a lot going for it. It's like almost perfect, but at times throughout the movie you can tell it was based on a play. And then at the very end, it like for the most part it like deals with like, it's kind of like The Good Son, or like where it just deals with like a really innately evil child, and like they do that really good. The who plays Rhoda Penmark, the girl who played her was really good. She was like, what I liked about her was that she bye Devin, she like acts like a kid, but like at the same time can still act like evilly. I don't know if that makes sense, but like she had that like perfect balance between like a kid and like someone who's capable of like what she does throughout the movie. But yeah, the ending is the case of like the Hays Code rearing its ugly head and making this like not as great as it could have been. So that's the only qualm I have with the movie. Is like the ending is just so dumb and makes no fucking sense. But the rest of the movie is excellent, and it was well liked for the time. I mean, it's been remade and remade again. I mean, The Good Son is technically a remake of The Bad Seed. So, but yeah, this was definitely very great movie. I highly recommend it. But outside of that, again, respectable for the time. Great stuff. Moving on. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the OG. Although, fun fact, the book was not called Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it was just called The Body Snatchers. But they changed it because they didn't want it to sound like a really like disgustingly gritty horror movie. So technically the 90s version was the only one that got the original title of the book right. But yeah, even despite that, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, one of those cases where it's just like, God damn, is it like near perfect? Like Kevin McCarthy is just so fucking good, endlessly likable in the lead role. Some of the stuff with like when you go to sleep, you like the alien cop, like some of that's like a little dodgy, but like I don't mind the narration. I like how you really get like the POV of this guy, this character, and how he like deals with like this impending invasion. And they really did try to skirt around the Hays Code as much as they could to like give it like a darker ending as much as they could, but they still had to like give it like, oh, it's still kind of hopeful. But even then, I still think it did a lot right. And I mean, Don Siegel, what do you expect from the man who would go on to direct Dirty Harry? Like, come on, like it's he's a great director. Like the cast here is great. Like everyone's great. I know Kevin McCarthy, but Dana Winter's also really good. All of them are, but Kevin McCarthy gets like his time to shine. I mean, you have the famous scene towards the end of the movie where he's like, "They're here already. You're like
next.
You're next.
You're next."
I know that scene is like campy now, but like
It's
honestly,
so brilliant.
the way
though.
he
It is.
sells it is so good. Though.
Exactly.
Like,
It really
you can
does. My
see and
God.
feel the desperation of like
Thanks.
this guy. Like, please, for the love of fucking God, like
Yes.
believe me. Like
Yeah.
they're gonna fucking kill us all and replace us.
Yes.
And I know it was like a
Exactly.
big sort of like commentary on communism at the time, but even then. It still doesn't make it like dated or bad or anything. It's like, oh yeah, there's that whole thing.
I
But
mean,
even then,
so was the Blob, really.
Yeah.
I mean, not a large red mass. I mean, but yeah, I mean, but yeah, I love this film. I really do. I mean, I'll never forget seeing that.
Oh
scene
yeah,
the first time. And Kevin McCarthy, even though upon reflection, I said I finally watched the remake, on my remake-a-thon, so to speak, this month, and I love it. It's really, really good, really good. And I would say that they're about even for me, 'cause
Yeah,
I
same
love
here.
both.
Same here.
But I will say that the remake does have a better supporting cast. Not the supporting cast of this is bad at all. They're not.
Yes.
It's just that you have some fucking legends in there.
You have Goldblum, Nimoy, Adams,
Nimoy,
and
fucking Mr. Spock.
and
Veronica
then
Cartwright.
Cartwright.
Yeah.
Cartwright. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, shit. She was in this and fucking Alien. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, back to back. Good years.
Yeah, seriously.
This.
But I mean, Kevin McCarthy is so amazing. I mean, he really sells it, man. I mean, his narration is so damn good because one of the things I kind of really, really wish they could have ended right there on the highway, but I totally get why they use the framing device. And at the same time, it is a dark ending as it is, it's as dark as they could have gone. And his narration is so damn good. It's so good. I mean, geez, I mean,
he sells it. He really sells
really does.
The situation that's going on.
And plus, it just makes his cameo in the remake that much better.
Yeah, I liked. I think it was Philip Kaufman who directed and wrote it, where he's like, yeah, I envisioned that Kevin McCarthy. He's like, I'm not saying it's a sequel to the original, but he's like, I kind of imagined it like sort of the ending where he's screaming to the heavens.
Yes.
I just imagined him like running across America, screaming to everybody that the impending invasion is coming. That's what I envisioned it, and I really liked that. I thought that was
I thought it was brilliant. Yeah, it was
original.
really great. Yeah, but this is just I fucking love this movie. It really is.
Oh yeah, this movie is awesome. So
I love movies that really fit within the context of their time, and this one does too. I mean, like Blob, reflects those Cold War fears.
Mark, I want to ask you something. I know you've seen this and the '70s version. Have you seen the other two interpretations of?
I have not. I would love to see them though. I'm probably gonna go back and try to see those.
There's the '90s one, and then the 2000s.
Yeah, it's just that I kind of didn't have time with my.
I got you.
You had so many.
Oh yeah,
because I even like. Yesterday or so, over the past couple of days, I shoehorned the Salem's Lot in there. So, but Salem's Lot, the original and the remake. I fucking hate the remake, by the way.
Yes, we know. We got so fucking mad yesterday. We're like, damn.
Oh, sorry, it wasn't you. It's just God. It was a bad day on top of it, and then they have that shit on top of it.
Yeah, I know, because I mean, it's like we knew that you weren't liking the movie, but it was like, damn,
oh no! It was
pissed in this.
I love to rant about bad movies I hate anyway.
But that's okay. We understand.
It's
just like, damn, he really hated this one.
I really did. I mean, it just the whole idea of. I know I'm getting off on a tangent here, but I mean, the whole idea that you could stop somebody from turning into a vampire with a fucking a rabies shot. Give me a fucking break. God damn it. What the fuck? I mean, come the fuck on.
I don't know what to tell you. I still plan to watch it. I'm still curious, so we'll see.
I get it. I mean, I don't blame you. I mean, I probably want to check. I also want to, speaking of, what movies with another remake, they made another one, the early 2000s, I think?
Yeah, mid 2000s. It had Rob Lowe as Ben Mears and Rutger Hauer as the main vampire.
As Straker, right?
Yeah.
Straker or is Barlow?
Barlow. No, he was Barlow.
Oh, he was Barlow. Okay.
Yeah,
I could
and
see
he
that.
wasn't, and just like in the book, he didn't look. He wasn't. He didn't look like the fucking Nosferatu looking vampire. He was just a guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, Rutger Hauer is pretty fucking scary looking anyway.
Yeah, it's true.
He's Rutger fucking Hauer. He can do that. It's like.
But yeah, no, I've heard mixed things about the 04 version. I've heard it's really, really good. I've also heard it's really, really bad. So take at your own risk.
Yeah.
But yeah, next up is Rodan. I decided to throw in a kaiju movie in there. Again, not a ton of stuff was coming out at the time. So I was like, all right, kaiju movies I think would be a good sort of, like addition, especially with we're nearing to the most famous ones. So I decided to throw Rodan. I've heard good things about this one, but yeah, for the most part, it's not like the best of kaiju movies, but I was like, yeah, let me include it. Next one is a classic, Hunchback of Notre Dame. I don't think this is a Hammer version. I think this is a different. I think this is a different version that just came out at around that time. But yeah, I've heard that this one is very good. Plus, period piece based on a book. I think that would definitely warrant something from the Academy. X the Unknown. I was just really searching for stuff to nominate. Yeah, it's British production was doing a little bit more than what was going on in America at the time. Might have liked it. More sci-fi, but a lot of these are more sci-fi than normal. So yeah, moving on. Next up, thank God. Okay, here we go. Something great to talk about. Diabolique, French film, obviously. But I did nominate the remake. I know the remake is kind of like hit or miss with among people, but this one is definitely one of the best of its kind at the time. It had a lot of great twists and turns. It had like this very like creepy atmospheric tone about it. The performances from both the wife and mistress are really, really good. I mean, it's like famous for the scene of him like rising out of the tub. I know that one's like a famous scene, but it's stuff. It's again, it's kind of like neo noir a little bit in terms of its ideas. I know it was kind of disliked for the time because a lot of French New Wave people were like, oh yeah, this sucks because it's not French New Wave. And part of the reason why I fucking hate fuck French New Wave. But I fucking, oh my God, like I just a little bit of a side tangent. Like I learned, oh my God, like every single time I took like a fucking film history course in college, they always had like a week where they fucking talked about French New Wave. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. All this shit sucks to me. Get the fuck out of here. I was just so I mean, it's
John,
like
it's French. You have to like it.
I know it's like Breathless and 400 Blows, all that. I know it's like all of it's like great, but it's just like I got it like kind of fucking hammered into my head so much. I'm kind of turned off by it for for so long. But like ignoring that,
The French New
Diabolique
Wave gave you PTSD.
Yeah, honestly, it kind of did a little bit. But yeah, but Diabolique is still a great, like kind of neo noir horror mystery thriller. It does so many genres, but they all executed perfectly, well performed, well written, well paced. It's slow, but it's never boring. Overall, it's one of the best of its kind. It's one of the best, like considered one of the greatest horror movies of all time and one of the greatest of the decade. So I had to include it. But going to the only Quatermass movie I have seen. Again, this is more sci-fi, and I will say this movie it was very interesting. Again, Brian Dunleavy is fucking terrible in this movie, but like I will say the reason that it works is the supporting cast is that good. Like they definitely like prop up the movie when he's like not on screen because it's like it's just the way that he plays. Like Quatermass is supposed to be like this incredibly intelligent like scientist, and like Dunleavy plays it like a fucking like cheesy noir detective from a bad film noir. He's like, we gotta stop this alien, and it's just like it doesn't come on. Like I don't believe for a second that this guy is a scientist. Never at all. But outside of that, the movie's fantastic. Like again, it's a slow burn. It's very dry, very British. But even then, it's still like it has like those like kind of high concept ideas like for the time of like science, not never reaching like like 2001 or something like that, although that came much later. But it definitely feels like a little bit more higher concept than something as silly as a guy like a fucking like evil starfish going around killing people like kind of thing. But it feels like greater and grander and feels more higher brow than it is. So I definitely had to include it. I think they would have appreciated that. Next, I decided to include one of the many classic Abbott and Costello movies. I did watch Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I haven't watched any of the others yet, but Meet Frankenstein was fucking great. That was a ton of fun. But yeah, it's just like with like what was going on at the time, not a lot of horror movies, like straight horror movies were coming out. So I decided to include this. I might as well include a horror comedy. Abbott and Costello are great, as they always are. So I'm like, you know what? Let me include it. They're great stuff. Next up is Tarantula. I have not seen this one yet, but I did just watch another, spider movie earlier today with Arachnophobia, which was surprisingly excellent. I love that movie. That was really, really good. But Tarantula, typical kind of B movie crap, but throw it a nomination, might as well.
I was going to say
one of Clint Eastwood's first movies, by the way.
It honestly, it kind of sounds like a movie that I feel like Zach would really be into.
Yeah, he
'cause
loves
he
spider
loves
movies.
he loves like giant spider B movie kind of
He
thing.
loves
so.
spider movies. I mean, dear Lord, for some reason. But I mean, it's funny, John, because you said, but I did just watch Arachnophobia. It's kind of sound like, you say, hey, are you a doctor? No, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Yeah. Oh my God, my dad.
Have you seen this movie? No, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
No, but I did watch a completely different spider movie. So that's ironic. We were talking about a spider movie. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, B movie crap, but decided to include it. Next up is Revenge of the Creature. Mark, I know you watched the original. Did you ever watch any of the sequels or no?
I never watched any of the sequels. That's part of the reason I want the whole collection, so I can see.
I know you recently got your statue a couple weeks ago, so of the Gill Man. I've only seen the original. We'll get to that soon enough, but I've heard good things about the sequel. I've heard it's kind of goes to a more like King Kong vibe, where they take him from his natural habitat and put him in like a fucking thing for an attraction, and then he escapes and goes on a rampage. Typical creature feature, but next up now, Mark, what do you have to say about Godzilla, or should we say Gojira?
Gojira. It's fucking brilliant, man. Jesus Christ.
It is.
It really is. I mean,
it is.
It's obviously Godzilla. It's very much a metaphor for the bomb.
Yeah, I was just about to mention, like, it was pretty much like a result that this big creature was made by nuclear weapons, and we only have ourselves to blame.
Yeah, well, what inspired the whole thing was, what terrified him was the test at Bikini Atoll of the first H bomb. Because I mean, some Japanese fishermen actually died from that shit. They actually accidentally got irradiated because they were too close. I mean, they didn't realize they were there, and oops, like shit. So I mean, it was brought back, of course, old memories, bad memories, recent memories at the time for Japan, which absolutely terrified them, because they have actually experienced, the only nation that's ever experienced use of atomic weapons in warfare. So the idea of this overpowering, unstoppable force, and I love the moral dilemma they put in the movie that they pay the scientist who comes up with a way to stop him. I love
the oxygen destroyer.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's just you can say, well, what's the big deal? It's just a MacGuffin, but the big deal is that the moral dilemma they place him in, because he's like, look, if I do this, it unleashes. It's the same dilemma as atomic bombing. If we use this, if we create this, if we use this, we're unleashing something with far bigger implications. This could be misused in the future for, to create mass destruction.
Right. And probably worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and in the end, of course they do it, but it's a very, very brilliant film. Very well done.
It's a near perfect movie.
Yeah. And I love the effects for the time too. The way like
the black and white, it's just so foreboding. A lot of people, because with how Godzilla is portrayed, was portrayed in the decades since then, seriously. Fucking destroy all monsters and all that shit. It's just people forget, this was a fucking terrifying fucking movie.
Really
was.
And it
was really terrifying. I actually remember watching this late at night. I think I watched it around the time the shitty 2014 version came out, because I saw it on Netflix and I was like, you know what, I haven't seen this. Let me give it a watch. And I was watching it like with the lights off. It was like, wow, kind of thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's definitely, it's aged like fine wine.
Oh, yeah.
And
It has.
and remember, that's a lot of fish. Anyway, going back to the original, Mark, what do you have to say about Creature from the Black Lagoon?
Oh, I love this movie. This movie is so beloved. I mean, by me. I mean, it's so great. I mean, it's one of those movies I finally watched. I was like, God damn, why didn't I watch this? I would have loved this as a kid, man. This is fucking great. I mean, it's absolutely great. I mean, you just fall in love with this poor creature, because I mean, he really, I mean, they invade his territory, I mean, geez, but it's really good. I mean, Julia Adams was really great too, as the girl. So I mean, he really, you feel for him because he really kind of falls in love with a girl, So I mean,
Yeah,
and she
classic story.
yeah, classic love story, So I mean, and they both sell it really well, But I mean, it's got some good action in it too, some good tension, So I mean, yeah, very good, a lot of fun film, very fun.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't love this as much as other people, but I will say the underwater scenes have still held.
Oh
up.
yeah.
They look
They're
damn good, and the Gilman looks great too.
Oh yeah, really does. Yeah,
So,
still does. Great design.
but I have seen them. Them was surprisingly excellent. I love how, like, again, with a lesser, I feel like, because with a lot of these 50s movies, they like take the threat so seriously, even though, because it's just like, if it was made nowadays, it's like giant ants. What's that? It's like the Marvel witty-esque approach that like every fucking movie has to do nowadays. Like, oh my god, what are you smoking, buddy? You're talking about giant ants here. Like, that fucking bullshit. But here it's like, the best way I can describe this movie is like, it's essentially a B movie version of Aliens, but it's with giant ants. And I think it does, it does so much right. It's like, they really, like, even though we know what the threat is, it's on the fucking poster. But like, I love how in the movie the mystery like kind of builds on what is actually going on and what is actually like killing people and destroying these things and like what have you. And I really like the slow build up. It did lose me in like a little bit of the second half, a little bit, but it has a great third act. And I love when they go into like the ant colony, like the oversized ant colony was really cool as well. And you also have like a very like strong female lead, which was like, I wouldn't say unheard of at the time, but not as popular as one would think. Like, it definitely, like, the kind of having that Aliens parallel with, Ripley. Um, and you do have like these guys going in, like soldiers going in, and like blowing these guys to hell with like flamethrowers. But the major difference is Aliens was anti-military, while this one is very much pro-military, which makes sense for the time. But even then, it's still like, with the way they handle its, ideas and source and whatnot, it kind of similar with what like kind of Godzilla was saying, although not nearly as like foreboding and terrifying, where it's like, maybe like kind of we did this to ourselves. We, created these weapons that like caused this. Maybe we're the ones to blame. Not as heavy, because they can only do so much with American movies at the time, but they still managed to like put like bits in there that like were like, yeah, this is our fault. We fucked up. What are we gonna do now? Kind of thing. Very, very a very ominous sort of ending. So I really liked that as well. Way better than I thought it would be. A little slow at times, but still a very, very good movie. But yeah, them is great stuff. Surprisingly great. And then this one, again, I was really trying to find stuff. And this would have been the first movie, that first year, I should say, where it would have been, well, if we're going in reverse order, this would be technically be the last year that would have 4 nominations rather than 5. So from here on out, it's mainly going to be 4, and then eventually we're going to get to 3, but that's going to not be for a while. But yeah, so this is kind of the ones I included. It's I believe it's a Spanish film. Never heard of it. No idea what it's. I haven't seen a lick of it, but I've heard good things, mainly on Letterboxd, and for the time I've heard it was good. So I was like, you know what, might as well include it. Next up is House of Wax. Again, Mark has watched this recently, and now I want to know your thoughts, Mark. What have you thought about House of Wax, the remake of House of Wax? Not the remake you think, but it is technically a remake. Oh, Mark, you're muted.
Yeah, it's a remake of Mystery of the House of Wax. From what was it, 1933?
1930, yeah, Mystery of the Wax Museum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mystery of the Wax Museum. And I thought the lead, I forget what his name was. He was so good in that. And he was so good in that. But Vincent Price was, he made this film. I mean, dear God, he was so good. I did like the character that the girl that he becomes obsessed with in this one more than in the original, because honestly, Fay Ray was not given a whole lot to do in the original, but here, she was given a lot more agency of her own. So, really, it was, I forget the girl's name, the one who played the reporter who kind of stole the show there in the original. Yeah. But in this one, I mean, it's really good. It's really good. I liked it better than the original, honestly, because I thought the music had a lot. I mean, the original was made in 1933 when you still had that kind of awkward time period with the I don't think there's really any music or hardly any in the original. But I mean, there's times when like during the fight scenes where it just feels awkward in the original. But I mean, this one, it's a very well done. It's a lot of fun. It's not great, not what it is best, but I mean, it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Had some good atmosphere, but and Vincent Price is always a joy.
Yeah.
So obviously we both like kind of respect. They had like the 3D, so like, hey, and they stopped the movie to fucking bounce a ball in your face for no fucking reason. They're like, hey, look, 3D. But still a good time. Still,
and
it's
then
not one of the
and then out of nowhere, a shitty remake came out in 2005,
which is not even a remake of this fucking movie.
Yeah,
it's a remake of Tourist Trap. It's like that's why I was saying this to Mark. It's like because they already announced a remake to Tourist Trap, because of course they did. Now what they need to do is remake the original House of Wax and call it Tourist Trap, so everything comes full circle. So yeah, but House of Wax is still a good time. Better than, I mean, the one good thing about the remake is that you kill off Paris Hilton, but outside of that, don't watch it. But this one I actually rewatched recently by accident. I forgot that I watched The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms a couple years ago, but I watched it again, not realizing, because I was watching, I'm like, this is familiar. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I fucking watched this movie before, but I had no recollection of it because I was watching the ending. I'm like, this seems familiar, and I'm like, I watched it before. But even then, this is good stuff. It's kind of it. This was the movie that partially inspired Godzilla, so it was, it's very important in that respect. But it's still a good movie. Like, I didn't like it that much the first time, but the second time I thought it was. It's very much like, reacting to the whole idea of this monster like coming out from beneath the depths kind of thing. But even then, like the I forget who plays the main lead, but he was really good. You sympathize with him a lot. He's just trying to prove that he's not fucking crazy, that he saw this thing. It's based on a Ray Bradbury short story. But yeah, overall it's a good stop motion. This was, I think, Ray Harryhausen's like one of his first like major movies. So, that's great. The monster looks great. It's definitely it's for the time, but but it's still a very good movie, and I think, would have been at least very respectable. So yeah, Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, good stuff. It came from outer space. This is kind of like if you took The Day the Earth Stood Still and Invasion of the Body Snatchers and you kind of put it into one. That's this movie, and I was surprised with how much I liked it. The main guy, again, extremely likable lead. Like, again, the movie, he really carries this movie and he really makes it like worth watching. But yeah, it's kind of like good aliens coming down and helping us, but like taking the forms of like multiple people. But like it's like the school teacher sees this thing crash, and he has to like investigate, and there's all that. So yeah, it came from outer space. Not one of the best movies of the 50s, but I think Richard Carlson did a really good job, and I really liked him. And overall, it's a very intriguing movie where it showed that the aliens weren't evil. So I thought that was very not totally new concept, as we will get to that later on, but In Came from Outer Space is a good one. Invaders from Mars. This is a little bit, cheaper. Is an indie movie, very silly, but it's one of those cases where it's like, all right, we'll include it because not a lot was coming out at the time. So let's try and like, throw it a bone kind of thing. Not one of the now I've seen the remake. I haven't seen the original, but yeah, still a relatively fun like time, but a little too cheap. But The White Reindeer, this I believe is a Finnish film. I know very little about this one, but again, I was really trying to find anything that I could nominate, and this was like one of the best ones from this year. So I decided to include. I believe it's Finnish. I'm gonna quickly look it up. Um, but yeah, hang on. It is Finnish. Okay, I was right. It is a Scandinavian, but it was it earned an award at the Cannes Film Festival, so that means something. Not the Palme d'Or, but it received another award. But it was White Reindeer, good stuff. But yeah, Ghost Ship, essentially just kind of cheesy B movie kind of stuff. Again, this is like kind of the less, known stuff. I was kind of just nominating anything. Ghost Ship, it's been the title for it has been used a million times that have nothing to do with one another. It's just like, it's a ghost ship. Ooh, scary. And that's, kind of it. But yeah, we're gonna be speeding through the last couple of years for this Black Castle. It does have Boris Karloff in it, and that's Lon Chaney Jr. That's a lot of fun, but yeah, it's typical like, oh, go to a castle and then sinister count, and very typical kind of that like foreign kind of shit going on. The Witch, not the Witch you all know and love, but I believe that this was
Not the VIII.
not the VIII. If I can find it. 1950. Okay, yeah, this is another Finnish film. But as the original title, The Witch Comes Back to Life. I haven't heard of this, but I was going through everything trying to nominate anything, and I found this one. So I decided to nominate it. Plus it has like gothic vibes, saw it was good, so I decided to include it. Now we get to one we can actually fucking talk about. The original Thing from Another World. Mark, you watched this one recently, right? I'm curious to know your thoughts about this one.
Yes, I did, and I thought it was good. It's solid. I mean, obviously it's overshadowed. I mean, rightfully so by the Carpenter remake, but I mean, John Carpenter likes this one. I mean, he's a fan of this one. So I mean,
Yeah.
it was surprisingly good. It was a lot better than I thought it would be, actually.
Yeah.
But I thought James Arness was really good.
Oh, yeah.
I was surprised to find out that he played the monster, but I think I had heard that. I think my mother had mentioned something like that. He played in a lot of horror films before, because I mean, she was a big fan of Gunsmoke.
Right.
He was, his signature role. It was on there. It was on the air for 20 fucking years. Jesus, it was Law and Order before Law and Order. But I mean, it was surprisingly good. I did like it. I thought they did a really good job for the kind of the set feels very claustrophobic, and yeah, but you had, of course, the evil scientist, who wants to study it, and protect it. It's kind of more like Alien in a way than the Thing we know. So
Yeah.
So I mean, but in that way. But I mean, yeah, I thought it was pretty good. The only thing is, got a few too many characters in it. I mean, we've talked about that before. It's got. I think you said the same thing in your reviews. It's got a little few too many, although they're good for what they are. I mean, most of it's there for banter. I mean,
yeah.
I do love the scene at the end, though. I mean, where he talks.
Oh yeah, the ending monologue is very chilling.
Yeah,
it's very very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that this movie, I really wanted to like it more, but I just couldn't. But it's like, because it's like the original review that I watched of James Rolfe, he like went on and on about how much he loved this movie. He gushed about how much he loves this movie.
Mhm.
And then the remake, he was with John Carpenter movie. He's like, yeah, it's good. Effects are good. The rest of it's kind of crap. And I'm like, all right, okay. But I didn't really know at the time because I didn't really watch a lot of horror movies. So when I went to go watch the John Carpenter, which I liked it, but I didn't love it. But like, I didn't realize that James Rolfe kind of tainted it for me, and it wasn't until like subsequent rewatches that I ended up, falling in love with it.
It's now your favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, it's my favorite movie of all time. So the thing and because of that, I really wanted to. I mean, I love the design of the monster. The theremin music is fucking great, and I do like the I do like bits of comedy here, like that one, like like that, like kind of 50s comedy that like kind of
that kind of banter, exactly.
And I know like one of the things that James Rolfe loves about the original is like, oh, you have more realistic dialogue where like people are talking over one another, and I'm like, I like that, but it's like if I don't give a shit about the characters, then why do I care about the banter?
Yeah, exactly.
But I liked how they were I also liked how they subverted, because I don't know if anybody watching or you guys know this, but like for the time, I don't think it was like part of the Hays Code. It was just like a rule they had to follow where you had to show somebody going from one room to another. Like you had to show that on screen, because apparently they thought fucking people were way too stupid that like if they didn't show that, they would be like, where did they come from? Like, where are they going? Like they thought the audience was that fucking stupid. So they had to like show that. And I like how in this, they kind of like did that where they opened the door and the monster's on the other side, like kind of subverting that little thing that they had to do. So I'm like, okay, that's cute. I love the design. I love how he's described as a giant carrot. I'm like, all right, very typical 50s kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't love this movie, but at the time it was very beloved, so that's why I included it. And I do like the vibe. It's a very chilling movie. It had a lot of good atmosphere in the first half, and then
very good.
The fucking dumbass who puts the electric blanket over it like a fucking moron. He's like, oh yeah, this like thing that could like be like a fucking parasite that kills us all. Yeah, let's put an electric blanket over it. But yeah, overall, I don't love it. I mean, it's unfortunately overshadowed by its much greater successor. But even then, I still like I respect it. I commend it. It still had a lot of good in it. It's just not. It's nothing compared to what Carpenter did, unfortunately. And I feel kind of bad in that respect, but it's just so much better. It's so much better. Like I can't. I'm so conflicted. I'm like so conflicted because of that. Because it's like I want to.
Well, he came up with an entirely new concept. Like this is an example to me of how when a remake really just kind of reinvents the whole concept and does something.
I mean, it went back to the book. That's
exactly. It went back to the book. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, and he just made it so much creepier. Dear God. But I mean, I do like the original for what it is. If you just judge it on its own, it's pretty good. I think. But I mean,
it's a good
Kenneth Tobey and Margaret Sheridan had good chemistry. Good banter back and forth between them. The whole,
I really liked. Scotty, I think his name was the photographer.
Yeah, Scotty was really good. I did like Scotty.
I thought he was a lot of fun. But yeah, overall, good stuff. I still recommend watching this because it's like one of those cases where it's like I feel like it in order to give this movie some like commendability respect, because if we didn't have the original, we might not have the remake. So
I'll tell you what, I like this much better than the more recent sort of
fucking 2011 movie.
Yeah, the prequel, whatever. Oh my god, what a
the
fucking
pre-make, as I call it, because it's
yeah,
essentially the same
exactly,
movie but takes place,
exactly,
beforehand.
exactly.
So,
Except instead of testing people's blood, which was an extremely tense scene, one of the most tense scenes in horror history, you know, you had this ridiculous. She's looking into people's mouths with her fucking fillings. Like, what the fuck?
yeah.
It's like, what the hell are we doing here? But
And not everybody has fillings, so
yeah,
it's
exactly. Like, I've never had a cavity. I don't have any fillings. Like, Jesus Christ.
But I mean, to be fair, it did take place in the 80s, and they had worse, toothpaste and shit. So or they just you had lack of brushing. So maybe that was the reason why. But yeah, next up we have Costello Meet the Invisible. I do wish they had Vincent Price as the Invisible Man, because that was that's what Meet Frankenstein teased. He's like, "Hello, I am the Invisible Man," and that's cute. But they didn't bring Vincent Price back for this one, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. But even then, I've heard it's great, another great Abbott and Costello movie. Horror comedy, but again, trying to find anything and everything to nominate. So I think, might as well include it. It's classic. They're classic, a lot of fun. The Man from Planet X, it's another, another sci-fi horror movie that I decided to include. Nothing really a lot to say about this one. And then I was like, you know what? I was like, I think I had another movie, and then I'm like, I know this is not hard. I know we're cheating with the 50s because a lot of it was sci-fi, but this you definitely it's not even close to horror. It's like the opposite. But it's just like, you know what? This is the greatest sci-fi movie of the 50s. I'm gonna fucking include it. All right, this is great shit.
Yeah.
This is just excellent in every respect.
It really is.
It's so innate. I mean, Patricia Neal's excellent. Michael Benny as Klaatu is so good. Everything about this movie. I know the title is just kind of there for a fucking 3-second scene, but I don't care. This movie just again, what I was talking about, it came from outer space. This is kind of not the original, but the kind of one of the earlier concepts of the aliens aren't bad. It's we're the bad guys, kind of following what they were trying to do at the time. Although the Hays Code again reared its ugly head in here, where they had to be oh, a guy's delivering a message, gets killed by the authorities, comes back to life, and then ascends to another place. We can't have that. So you got to say that he's not Jesus in the middle of the movie.
And,
so
and
Rob,
this is, I was going to say, this is also the one, the words that were pronounced, you remember in Army of Darkness,
Yeah, I mean, Klaatu Barada Nikto is just fucking iconic.
It is.
That is... yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, what another
N-word.
No, I'm just kidding.
And then, but yeah, this is an awesome
excellent.
Movie.
Yeah, really.
Fuck the remake, by the way.
I haven't seen it, but
I saw the remake actually before. I'm sure I'd probably seen this as a kid, because I watched a lot of 50 sci-fi as a kid. But I mean, I remember watching the remake when it came out. Dear God, it was so awful. And
it's a shame because Scott Derrickson's a great director.
He is. I
think he was just a higher job. I think
Keanu
they're do this movie
for that. I mean, Keanu would be.
Although I will say this about the remake, it has Devin's favorite actress.
I was just going to mention Jennifer Connelly, Devin's absolute favorite actress of all time. Great stuff. But yeah, the original.
Her riding a hobby horse is fucking hot as hell.
Another shitty career opportunities, fucking garbage ass movie. But that's the only reason that movie's fucking remembered.
Exactly.
Featuring the guy, featuring the guy who only speaks English in from Pulp Fiction. But yeah, The Day of the Earth is still one of the greatest of all time. One of the greatest of the 50s. I might even see the greatest sci-fi movie of the 50s. That might be a big jump for a lot of people, but it might be for me. I'm just, that's how it is. But yeah, next up, I chose a Spanish movie, The Man Without a Face. not the one with Mel Gibson from the 90s, but this was I heard it was good. I saw, I'm like, okay, you know what, let me include it, foreign film. Because when it comes to like foreign films, like during like earlier times, outside of like the super famous ones like Gojira and all that shit, not
Yeah.
really remembered greatly, even if they're really good, like White Reindeer and The Witch and this movie. Um, it's still like important to like try to get everything. And I think it was like 45, 46 where they where they added like, oh, they could nominate every kind of movie. Because that was a lot of people think, oh, foreign films, that was only like recent, but no, they gave the okay for foreign films way back in like the 40s. So that's why these are being included, because I'm like trying to fix in with the Academy rules at the time. So yeah, I decided to include this one, El Hombre Sin Rostro. So yeah, decided to include this one. Kind of, has blood and black lace kind of vibes. Then unfortunately for the rest of the 1950, there was like no other horror movies coming out. So unfortunately, I had to cheat a little bit. I had to include some thrillers. So even though they're not really horror, but hey, sci-fi isn't horror either. So if I'm cheating with sci-fi, I might as well cheat with thrillers too. And these are kind of as closest to horror you could possibly get. So I decided on Gun Crazy, just a random movie. I again saw it was really good. Young people, it kind of has Natural Born Killers kind of vibes, Bonnie and Clyde type of thing. But yeah, decided to include Gun Crazy. And then Where the Sidewalk Ends, not the Shel Silverstein collection, but Gene Tierney, Dana Andrews. I believe this was a Joseph Mankiewicz production, who did a lot of great movies. He did the next one. Sorry, he didn't do Where the Sidewalk Ends. My apologies. Joseph Mankiewicz did this one. But Where the Sidewalk Ends, decided to include this one, where it's more like a noir thriller than horror, but crime drama kind of vibes as well. Kind of going into like corrupt sort of police, which is like a horror in and of itself in a way. And then finally, No Way Out. This is the Joseph Mankiewicz movie. Joseph Mankiewicz famously wrote and or directed All About Eve, which would go on to win an Academy Award. So this was sometime. When did All About Eve come out? I believe it came out after this. It came out the same year as this movie, so like, it might mean something. Um, it has like implications of like racism and again, the if very early for the time, like 1950 is crazy, because guy was a doctor and he's black. Holy shit. And very intriguing concept, very intriguing sort of film, so I decided to include it. I know I was kind of cheating with those, but I was cheating a lot with the 50s, but that's about it. So that is the 50s. Now we're getting a little bit less knowledgeable in this day and age, because nobody really knows like 50s, 40s, and 30s slash 20s movies that much in regards. I know we're all film nerds here, but it's still like harder to like kind of gauge that, because older movies not a lot of people watch. But even then, we're going back to the beginning no matter what. So that is for the 50s. As I always mention, please vote on your favorites. I know like a lot of these you guys might not have seen, but you could do extra research, maybe watch some videos on these movies, or really take our advice to heart in terms of the movies we have seen. So I recommend it. Please, fill those out so you guys can choose on what the best of each year will be. Always in the description below. Once again, thank you for watching. We will see you Thursday when we talk about the very famous movies of the 1940s. But until then, see you later.